Okay, I want to reinforce a few ideas about rational equations. And the reason why is because these are things that you often forget. So, if variable in the denominator what happens? If you have a variable in the denominator, there are restricted values. You must list these restricted values. If you do it in the x equal form, this is the list. If you do it in the x does not equal form, this is what we call domain form. In other words, it's what is permitted to be used in that particular equation. So either list form or domain form. I really don't care which way you use it, but you must list the restricted values first. I always say do that first because otherwise you forget to do it, or at least I do. The next thing I'm going to look for is there a common denominator? Lowest common denominator. If I have a lowest common denominator, then I will use that to simplify that side. If there is no common denominator, no LCD, then check for two fractions which are all numbers, only numbers. Try to put them on the same side. Okay, and then simplify, okay, before you do your cross products. This one is going to happen before you do cross products as well. And finally, when there is one fraction or one rational expression, let's use rational expression. One rational expression equal to one rational expression of the form something over something equal, well, let's just do A over B is equal to C over D, then do cross products. So this reduces down the rational equations into very precise order of events. First, do your restricted values, if there are any. Then you look to see if you have an LCD on one side of your equation. If you do, you simplify and then do cross products. If you do not have an LCD, do you have a fraction on one side with only numbers and a fraction on the other side with only numbers? If that is the case, you will then do what you have to do to move it so they're on the same side and simplify. Then use cross products. When you have one rational expression on one side, one rational expression on the other side of the form A over B equal to C over D, in other words, I can't add something to it or subtract something from it, then do your cross products. So this is a very brief recap of what we did more extensively. So let's look at this. If we have 3 over x is equal to 5 over x plus 2. First step, do I have variables in my denominator? Yes, I do. So my first step is going to be to state my restricted values. So x equal to 0 is one restricted value, and x plus 2 equal to 0 will give me my other restricted values. Subtract 2 from both sides, giving me x equals negative 2. So my restricted values are x cannot equal a negative 2 or a 0. There's my restricted values. Write them down clearly. Or I could say x equals negative 2 comma 0 and put RV. RV for restricted value, okay? Now, since I have one rational expression here, one rational expression here with an equal in between, I can now apply my cross products. But remember, whatever is on top or bottom has to multiply everything on the other side of it. So this will be 5 times x is equal to 3 times x plus 2. Now simply use your equation solving skills that you've been learning. 3x plus 6, subtract my 3x from both sides, and I end up with 2x is equal to 6, divide by 2, and x is equal to 3. Now check. Is that 3 one of the restricted values? No, it is not. Therefore, I have a valid answer. So this is an example of an A over B, C over D cross product after we got our restricted values, okay? So now let's look at an example with an LCD on the bottom. Let's go negative 10, okay? Now, in this case, I have a common denominator. But before we deal with that, do we have a variable in the denominator? Yes, we do. So my first step is to put my x equal to 0, or my restricted value is x cannot equal 0. I have that listed. Restricted value is now done. Now I have common denominator. 2 minus 5 is a negative 5 over x, and that is equal to a negative 10 over 1, because whenever you turn an integer into a fraction, it becomes that number over 1. Negative 10 divided by 1 is negative 10. And now we're going to do cross products. Gives me negative 10x is equal to negative 5. Divide by my negative 10. And I end up with x is equal to 1/2. Is 1/2 part of my restricted values? No, so therefore it is a valid answer. So as you can see, this is the second form where I had common denominator. I could combine it, get to my ratio or a fraction equal to another fraction, and then I can do my solution with my cross products. The last one I want you to look at for this particular type, then I'm going to do one that is all letters, okay? And that is one where I have something that I have a fraction added to. Okay? Now, on this one, notice it is of the type here. I don't have an LCD, but I do have two fractions. They're not on the same side, and they're all numbers. I have a negative 3/4 and I have a 2/3, but they're on opposite sides of the equal. So I'm going to move my 3/4 to join my 2/3. So I will end up with a fraction only on both sides. I'm going to put subtract 3/4, add 3/4 here. 12 is my common denominator. So this is going to be 8. 3 and 3 is 9/12. So this cancels out, and I'm left with 1 over x is equal to 17 over 12. You see that? 1 over x, because 1 over x minus 0 or plus 0 is simply 1 over x, and is equal to 17 over 12 because I added those two fractions when I moved it from one side to the other. Now I have an A over B equals a C over D. So now I can use my cross products. So I'm going to multiply like this, and I'm going to get 17 times x is 17x is equal to 1 times 12 is 12. Divide by 17, and that leaves me x is equal to 12/17. Please leave it as a fraction. I didn't do my restricted value. X cannot equal 0 because there's only one variable in the denominator. There's nothing added or subtracted to it. So my restricted value is x cannot equal 0. And since my number 12/17 is not 0, I have a valid answer. So this is a recap of those types of problems that we've been doing with our rational equations. Just thought I would hit it again because this is one of the hardest assignments for students to do. They seem to really struggle with these rational equations. And now I'm going to show you a rational equation which is all letters, and you can see how it works out. And I'm going to do it in two different ways. And it's all letters, so we have a 1 over A plus a 1 over B equal to a 1 over C. A, B, and C are real numbers and cannot equal 0. So we're going to write that down. A, B, and C cannot equal 0. So there's my restricted value. Now, we can either do a common denominator and build it and then do my cross products. So A and B are not the same. So A times B would be your common denominator. So A times B means I have to multiply the top times B as well. And 1 times B is B. A times B here, so B times A builds my AB. So I have to multiply by A up here, giving me A. Now, I have a common denominator, so this gives me B plus A over AB is equal to 1 over C. Now we're going to do our cross products. And I have C times B plus A is equal to AB times 1, which is AB. Distribute, and I end up with CB plus CA is equal to AB, or I can change my order of this and have BC plus AC is equal to AB. Sometimes we like things to be alphabetical. So these are both correct. And since we don't know what letter we want, we can't do any more with it. What we're looking at is what happens as you build common denominators and stuff. So there's one other way to do this. And the other way to do this is to multiply every term by the common denominator. And my common denominator, my LCD, is equal to A times B times C, because none of them are the same. So this would be times ABC, this one is times ABC, and this one is times ABC. And notice those are in the denominator, in the numerator, because they're actually over 1, even though I don't write it. And notice, A divided by A cancels out that A and makes 1, and I'm left with BC, plus B divided by B is 1, and I'm left with A times C times 1, which is AC. Here, my C cancels out my C, and I'm left with AB. And you're finished. This is a skill that those of you going on into college algebra, this will be an excellent skill for you to learn, is multiplying every term by your common denominator and thus eliminating denominators completely. So this is just another way to look at this, and as you work problems, you can use this method if you want to. And so I just wanted to recap again what it is happening with rational equations and the importance of the restricted values and using your fractions to get to a proportion, which is a ratio equal to another ratio, and then using your cross products to come up with a solution for it. And there's other ways you can use this method too if you want to, but basically I've been working with proportions because the next assignments are going to use proportions a lot, and so it would be good to have that down really well. Anyhow, that's your assignment. Good luck.